PLC Network here with another unboxing, this time coming from the company LaserPecker. This specifically is the LaserPecker LP5 20W dual laser model. This is the company's latest design that we recently covered at CES earlier this year in January, where we had the opportunity to really discuss what this thing is capable of doing at the show, which was a lot. And it's really starting to change what you're able to do in the industry when it comes to just powerful features that are just really condensed down to a small, again, mobile-friendly design. It makes use of two 20-watt lasers, including a fiber and a diode laser. And with that, it's able to do everything it's capable of doing, which is cutting, engraving, embossing, and even etching, which is pretty much engraving, but it's able to do all of that. And it comes with multiple different accessories and everything else that you're able to buy into, optionally, depending on if you want to buy them separately or as a kit. This one right here is just the basic kit, so it just gives you the laser cutter and the general, the stand and everything that it generally comes with. But you also have additional accessories as well you can buy into to really maximize what this is capable of. And because of the 20-watt laser system, dual laser system, it's capable of cutting up to 20 millimeters worth of wood. And that's, most soft woods will say. Some of the harder, more dense woods, probably you'll get a little bit less when it comes to how thick you can cut through. But the same thing applies to just any laser cutter out there, and as well as all the materials. So moving on from wood, you also have acrylic, which is up to 15 millimeters. And then you have certain soft metals like brass and gold, which you can cut up to 0.5 millimeters for when you're working on really precise little things such as jewelry or coins or any other kind of fine metals that you'd want to cut through. Now, given I said coins, that would be a really thin coin if you're trying to cut through it, and probably wouldn't be the best example. For coins, it's more about embossing and engraving, in which case you can go to town because you're doing it in layers. But when it comes to cutting, which means you're cutting right through, those are the maximum thresholds, we'll say, for all those materials. So for wood, acrylic, and soft metals. So this is really marketed towards professionals more than anything. That's really what LaserPecker is really trying to push for if you look at any of their marketing for this, because they're pushing for, people running kiosks and shopping malls and whatnot. Although that doesn't limit you to just professionals, as if you are a consumer who just happens to be a hobbyist when it comes to engraving, embossing, and whatnot, or you're looking to make a little money on this side, you can buy into this because it's not too expensive for what it is, what it's capable of doing, and what it comes with. So again, this is good for all sorts of things. You got jewelry, coasters, leather, plastics, metals, mugs. It's really limited to just your imagination and what these lasers are capable of embossing or cutting through. But this is definitely one of the most powerful units that LaserPecker has made to date, and the most impressive. Again, at the show, we got to see examples of all sorts of materials that they were able to cut or emboss or etch or engrave, and the results were phenomenal. And as for those optional accessories, you have things like the air purifier, you have the slide extension, which just allows it to slide the item through as it's etching, or engraving. So if you have, let's say, a plaque or something, some kind of a longer surface that's beyond what it's capable of just sitting on top of, it can slide it as it's etching, so that way you can continue to design the design as it goes. And then you have the rotary module, which is really for like pipes and mugs and anything else that you have to turn that has a round surface to it or cylinder-like surface to it. So if you have a flask or a mug or anything else that's etchable or engravable, you'll be able to put that onto the rotary module that works with this, so that you can customize some of that product as well. But again, those are optional accessories and or part of bigger kits. This, again, is their basic kit. This just comes with the stand, the laser cutter, and the cables, and this will run you, on average, the MSRP is $32.99, so that's $3,299. And that might, again, it might seem a little high, but if you compare it to what's out there in the market, which it's capable of doing what some of these bigger machines can do, it's a pretty good deal, because a lot of those machines will run anywhere between, we'll say on average, $3,000 to $5,000, depending on the brand and the complexity of the machine and its surface area. So what you're paying for is really mobility. You're paying for taking all that technology and condensing it down into a small format that you can carry and use just about anywhere. And the only sacrifice you're getting really is just that surface area, because compared to a bed engraver or cutter or etcher, you know, you're not getting this massive surface area. You're just getting that basic surface area that this is capable of sitting on top of, unless you're getting the slight extension for certain other projects. So everything comes with that balance, trying to figure out what you need specifically. And if you have a mall kiosk or a small hobby for jewelry or anything else, this is perfect and way more reasonable than having to invest into a big sloppy bed that takes up a lot of space in your garage or other work area, when you can just carry this around and use it just about anywhere. So what we're going to do today is we're going to open this up. We're going to see what it looks like, what it comes with, and we're going to show you some examples of what it's capable of doing, which we've already done so far, but we'll go a little bit deeper in that in just a moment. So the first thing you get here is you have a box with some accessories here, and you have some instructions. Those instructions, you have this Hello Creative LaserPecker owner is ready to make something different. This is just kind of a brief introduction into the company, some QR codes for material test array function, LaserPecker 5 VIP group, and use tutorial. So, and some contact information so you can reach out to the company if you need to. And then you have the manual, which looks like it comes with different languages, so it isn't really as thick as it appears. That isn't too bad at all, actually. So the manual is only about that thick, so it's not really much to read through. I would recommend reading the manual. Sometimes we tell you you don't need the manual, but in this case you definitely do for various reasons, one of those being safety. If you've never used a laser machine like this before, there's a lot of things to take into consideration for your own personal safety. And then it gives you a package list to make sure everything, that's supposed to come in the box is in the box. It teaches you the assembly and how to put everything together, which doesn't take much time. It teaches you how to plug it in and to make use of it, and an introduction to the components, as well as how to connect some of the accessories. And then it gets you connected to Wi-Fi, so you're able to access it. Now, what's really nice about this is that you're able to use this using just an app. And this is what really sets LaserPecker apart from some of its counterparts out there in the industry, because, like, for example, some of the bed printers and other alternative options, most of those use desktops to control what you're trying to do. So what's really nice about this one is you don't necessarily need that. For most of your basic needs, you only need to make use of the app. And the app is incredibly user-friendly for most. There have been reports out there from users that the app is a little hard to get around. We have never experienced that ourselves. We have, again, used a number of LaserPecker's products so far, including the 3, which was a fantastic unit. But our use of the app has been absolutely fantastic thus far. As long as you remain close to the etcher as it's working, then you're fine. Or in this case, engraver, embosser, cutter. I mean, this is an everything product. But you're able to make use of that app for a user-friendly experience. So if you're just looking to engrave something simple on the surface area, it's not going to take much time to pull that off. Of course, if you want a more thorough experience and to some of the more advanced features, then yes, you'll want to connect the PC software. And you can always take it in steps if you want to. Start off with the app, kind of become familiar with the product, then download the software and take it up a notch by using that. Either way, it's a pretty user-friendly experience, which is kind of nice to see when it comes to products like these, because there are some out there that are incredibly hard to use and or use third-party software, which has pros and cons in itself as well, but those software products are usually a little bit more involved and requires an additional, layer of education on your part to really understand how they function. But manual, it's pretty simple to get through, or it should be pretty simple to get through. There's not that many pages, and you'll be off and using this in no time. Moving into what's inside of this accessory envelope. I'm going to guess this is some sample materials, possibly. Oops, I think I'm right. LaserPecker is usually pretty good, or, well, I won't say LaserPecker. I'll say that most companies out there with these machines are pretty good at providing you with some sample materials because they want you to get a feel for how it works before you start purchasing into these materials and making mistakes that cost you money. So this allows you to get some practice in before you start doing that, so that way you know what you're doing and there are no regrets. And this is actually a pretty decent amount of stuff. I like this. So you have a stone coaster, you have various types of, you got 2 pieces of acrylic here, you have 2 pieces of wood, you have a nice piece of leather, you have a piece of very thin, looks like aluminum metal, and then you have 2 coins. Now this is important because if you really want to get an idea for its ability to emboss, these are what you really want to have fun with. I mean, you can do coasters as well. Embossing coasters is a lot of fun, but creating your own coins, and that's, if you're going to try to sell something, I mean, both of those things are going to be a high sought after product, but coins are kind of cool because if you can customize this to, say, like a local sports team or a club, you'll sell these like crazy, or just give them away if it's just a hobby. And then you have 2 little wooden keychains here, so that way you can have 2 keychains to test with as well. All in all, this is a pretty good selection of sample materials to get you started with and should provide an excellent testing grounds. And the 2 pieces of wood are 2 different densities as well. So that way you can really see how powerful it is and or change up exactly what you're trying to accomplish. This you could be trying to cut. This one you might even try to emboss a little bit. But with the wood being up to 20 millimeters, either one of these can easily be cut. So all depends on what you're trying to practice with. But this is definitely a sufficient amount of practice material to get started with. Moving further into the box, we have the actual base, which you just gotta pry out of this. This is just gonna be the base that everything sits on top of. And this gives you a surface area to place your object on that you're trying to engrave, and it does its work on top of that, so that way you're not actually hurting the surface that the whole thing is sitting on. Moving further into the box, you can see everything else is broken down and really presented to you individually, including naming all of these products so you know exactly what each one does as you're picking them out of the box, which is nice. So first off, we have a USB cable. Now USB cables are going to be used for connecting all of your accessories, including the stand that the laser is going to connect to when you're making use of the base. So one of these is a 0.6 meter one and the other one is a 1.5 meter one. The shorter one's probably going to go between just the laser cutter and the arm attachment that's going to hook to that can raise up and down typically. Then you have your power adapter, which is just a nice big brick, as well as an AC cord, which goes from the brick to the laser machine. And further in, it looks like they put this into the box in the wrong orientation since the text wasn't on top, but this is the goggle case, or just really goggles, or actually safety glasses, since they're not really goggles. But every laser product should come with these, and definitely every LaserPecker product definitely comes with one of these, and this is so incredibly important because these lasers will really destroy your vision or just your sight if you're not using proper eye protection. Hence the safety reasons for reading the manual. Then you have an exhaust tube here, which is very well designed. You can look inside, and it's foil lined, and this is going to be for your fumes and everything else coming out of the unit. And actually taking a step back really quick, I wanted to point out these brackets. These brackets, if you pay attention to the base, can't believe I almost forgot to point that out, but this base has a ton of holes in it. If you are concerned about the surface area of what this is sitting on and the stability of it and whatnot, you have some screws in here. You can use that to mount these to the base plate, and that holds your project down so that way nothing slides around during the process, because you do not want that to move the tiniest bit while it's in session, or you will have a graving or etching or cutting that's just off and it's going to ruin your whole project. You do not want your object that you're trying to adjust or to engrave or anything to move around. So that's what that's for. Then you have your coupler, which goes to the back, which connects this to the back of the unit. And then you have the shield. Now the shield is used to encase your project as it's being cut or engraved, so that way all the fumes and everything remain inside and it's just not escaping all over the place. And it also provides its own protection, so that way you don't necessarily need glasses while it's in operation. This is very important, again, for safety purposes. This shield can be removed if you need it to, but it's best to keep it in. And then this is the exhaust in the back. You have a USB port or a USB cable built into it, because this has a fan built inside. And again, that's where you're going to connect this to the unit. The coupler goes on there, and oops, this screws into the little coupler, and now you have the ability of connecting this to an air purifier attachment or other machine. If you already have one, you can always adapt this to that. Like we have some industrial grade ones here that we use for testing various product as it comes in, and keeps our air quality here nice and clean. But that helps to remove all those fumes. You're not breathing it in, because when you're cutting some of these materials, especially plastic, you have to be extra careful, because that can cause a lot of trouble. Moving further into the box, we have some additional parts and pieces. We have a box here that, let's see what it contains. Which appears to be some form of just base layer to probably put inside and put your print on top of, giving you grooves for smoke and everything to roll through and escape. So anything that's going downward, because in some cases it might be an extra smoky kind of project, in which case you do not want that to thicken up the space between the laser and the object that you're trying to engrave or cut. So that's also part of this, getting rid of that smoke. This allows channels underneath for it to escape out of. Usually if you're using a large bed printer, there's actually bases like this you can buy that are typically like honeycomb and other formats that do that. Looking at that, at least that is my biggest assumption, since this wasn't on the product list for inventorying what comes in the box, and there is nothing printed on the little box that slid out of. But that would make perfect sense when you think about it. You also have an accessory case here, which is always fun to have. What this comes with is different Allen keys and various different accessories. You have a little mesh, or just a cleaning thing for the lens. You have some little separators, so you can customize this as needed. You have 2 USB adapters. You have some extra screws. And it looks like you have a typical little SanDisk USB drive as well. So that's pretty good extra to throw in there, especially for the price of the unit. And then you have the arm. Now this is going to be a little bit more intense than your typical arm that you find with some of the earlier models, because there's a little bit more weight to this bad boy, because it's such a powerful product compared to the basic laser etchers or engravers. So this hooks to the base like this, using the proper accessories. And then the laser module mounts to this mounts to the bottom of that, and this raises it up and down, so that way you can adjust to the thickness of whatever surface area you're trying to engrave or cut. And then you have these 2 buttons up here to raise the arm up and down. Now this is a very robust arm, and when you're looking at this, it kind of gives you a good idea on why this costs as much as it does, because the company really appears to have focused on quality of materials this time around. I mean, they always have. LaserPecker, there's a reason why we at least have a lot of great things to say about LaserPecker, because they typically always provide an amazing product. Then you have the laser. Now this thing This is where all the weight comes into play, most of it at least. I mean, this has a little bit of weight to it. This has a little bit of weight to it, but this is where the magic happens. This is your laser module. You can see the module right there. The dual laser design is inside of here. You have some ventilation here. You have your connection point, and you have, let's see, you have some buttons on the top here. You have your pause option. You have an emergency stop button, which is just a kind of a push to engage button and then push to release. And by doing that, it just kills it off in case there's an emergency. Let's say the product's on fire or something, whatever you're trying to cut through. Let's say you adjusted your settings a little too high and it's causing some complications. For safety reasons, you can just kill it by pushing that in. As for the pause button, that simply just pauses the job that it's currently working on. Pressing it again is going to resume it. And then you have a preview option, so you can trigger the preview to see what your field of play is before you start to etch or engrave your product or cut. And then you have plenty of ventilation here on both the sides and the top for sucking air in and bringing it out, keeping everything nice and cool. And we're actually going to discuss one last piece, which is important, and that's all the connections on the back. This is where all those USB connections are being connected to. You have your 3 out USB connections, which is going to be for your accessories. You have a USB-in, which is going to be for that USB drive. You have a USB-C out to connect this to your computer, so that way you can control it via the application on the computer. You have a security key. Now that's important. The 2 USB adapters, I thought were adapters in there, one of them is actually a security key, and the whole purpose of that is so that you can have this sitting somewhere and know that nobody's going to be able to make use of it without that key. So as long as you take that key with you, kids or anybody else won't have a chance to play with this and, hurt themselves. And then you have power to the wall. And make sure you have this connected to a decent connection or a decent breaker, that doesn't have a lot of stuff loaded onto it. And this has a 7.5 amp requirement to it, and that typically just means, your typical home breaker in the United States is about 15 amps, or at least the max load that you can have on a breaker in your outlets in a home would be 15 amps, so 7.5 is half of that. So just make sure you don't have 2 of these running, or say this and a space heater or anything like that, or you will trip your breaker. So just something to keep in mind. But from here, that's it, and now we're going to take the time to put this together, which shouldn't take long. And just like that, it's finished. So you have your laser module here that's on top. You got the arm for the stand. You have your base unit. You have your shield here with the exhaust on the back. You're able to apply your adapter and your hose. And this moves it up and down so that way you can get closer or further from the surface area you're trying to work with. And all of your USB connections are on the back. So you have one that's from the fan that's going to connect to one of those USB connections here on the back. So you can see I just did that. This is one of the output connections. And you would do the same thing for connecting it to the stand, which is right there in the bottom. So you're going to want to use the 0.6 millimeter one, which would be the best one, in my opinion, because the longer one's going to be for some of the other accessories. You just hook that in the back here, just like that. Because everything's taking power from the laser module, which plugs into the wall power via the DC outlet, AC to DC outlet on the back, or DC to AC. So that's it. Again, the hose is just so you can redirect this. The reason why they give you the hose, which is a very clever move on LaserPecker's part, is because even though you don't have an air purifier accessory in this kit, you can still buy it later on, but you can also create your own path for the smoke and everything that's coming from the job that you're currently working on. So this, since it has a really good stretch to it, this can be redirected to, say, a window. You can just design your own kind of setup and seal it on the window, so that way all of it gets projected outside and away from your work area, which is incredibly important if you're not working in, say, a garage. Or you can send it down and underneath your garage door, or through a vent in a door, if you have a side entrance door to your garage and then there's some kind of an air access vent just to keep air flowing in and out of the garage, you have that option as well. It's just anything you can come up with your own solution for, you're able to use this so you can redirect all of that way. And so you're not breathing it. So the fact that they include this is pretty cool, and it's a pretty, I'd say it's a high five towards LaserPecker for that one. It's a pretty good move because they are really trying to focus on safety on this model. Also, one thing to point out is the cap that protects the laser. They do include this little tab on here. You can remove this if you want, but it's just drag to remove. You pull this and it just pops the capsule or the cap off. It's important to understand this just pulls off and slides back into place because the laser module does spin or unscrew, so you don't want to unscrew that unless you're replacing it with something else. But this unit is massive, it's powerful, it has a whole bunch of accessories going for it, and again, with something like this, you could really do just about anything. And I mean, mind you, you're not going to be cutting through some of that thicker material out there that you can pull off with some of these really large, hardcore commercial or enterprise machines. But I mean, this is like entry-level commercial right here, so you can do a lot with it for a reasonable price point. So $3,300, if you think about it, is not much for what this is capable of doing. It is a very powerful machine, and as you can see here, it does a lot. So we are going to, what we're going to do is we're going to go into time here and come back. Since, I mean, this is the first time we've taken it out of the box, put it together. So we're going to go through a lot of work, really just testing various different materials and getting some ideas of what it's capable of with both the app and the software. And you're going to see all of it floating above me now, because by the time editing gets to this video and does their thing, we're going to have all of that content to show you. So it's right here and throughout the rest of this video. I mean, this thing is fantastic, and I can tell you that, even though I haven't turned it on yet, because I've used, personally, many of the LaserPecker products that have come in. We have all used them, for the most part, at least those of us willing enough to learn the app, which, again, doesn't take much. In this case, the application on the computer is going to be a little bit more intense, but I mean, it's not going to be much to really jump into. And there is also one final thing to point out is they do have an enclosure for this as well, which takes things to a whole nother level. You're able to do batch processing with this. They have an optional enclosure that we discussed at CES in January, where you can install the module into, and you can cut like multiple objects. So let's say you have, you know, 10 of these coins or something, or 6 of these coasters. You can lay them out into the enclosure and use the application to identify all the objects and engrave them as a batch process, so you're not doing one at a time, which is a crazy and amazing thing to have. It does raise the price a little bit. I cannot remember how much, but if you are taking yourself serious, that is something to really kind of consider if you want to, you know, just jump right into the deep end and have access to all the capabilities of what this is capable of achieving. So it's again, I cannot stop saying, powerful laser etcher, engraver, cutter, embosser. The embosser, I mean, cutting into these coins and whatnot, and the coasters, you're able to achieve a lot of really interesting designs. If you really want to, you know, you can have a nice textured artwork going across this coin of a Viking invasion or something, or just have your own face on a coin. Some kind of an award to give somebody, you know, maybe they have made it through AA and achieved you know, multiple years of escaping some kind of a bad vice. You can give them one of these as a fun reward or something else, or of course sell these on eBay, on Etsy, to your friends, to your neighbors at work, or, you know, or at a mall kiosk. I mean, you are only limited to your own creativity because this machine does so much. And it's portable. It is not like having one of those massive bed laser etchers that are very difficult to move around. And, you know, maybe they'll fit in the trunk of your car, maybe they won't. But getting them from point A to point B is not exactly easy, where this is. And you can find this on Amazon. You can find this on LaserPecker's website. We'll include links in the description below. And as you can see in this video, there's plenty of other content, you know, through the years that we've covered. with LaserPecker, including the interview we had with them back in January. I mean, we've just had a lot of exposure to the company, and so far we haven't really been able to find anything that we don't like. Everything's a little bit pricier only because the quality of materials and their capabilities are just a little beyond what you typically find with some of the companies out there. And until there's a lot of competition, and that's if there's a lot of competition, that price point's not going to change any. So just something to bear and keep in mind. LaserPecker definitely has really secured their space in the industry, and this just is one more example providing proof to why they have succeeded so well at that. So again, we'll have all of that information, a link to where you can find this, as well as some of the other accessories in the description, so that you're able to find that and buy into one of these or invest into one of these yourself if you so choose. Let it be for business or play. Now, if you liked what you've seen here, don't forget to subscribe and follow us and click the like button to let us know you like this video. And of course, make use of the comment section below to share any thoughts, comments, questions, or anything you might have. Let it be for each other, for us, or even the manufacturer if they just so happen to be watching at any point. And as always, we thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time. If you want to stay on top of all the latest and greatest, and or at least the gadgets we cover, remember to subscribe right here. Subscription button. Click it. You're going to want to. There's lots of videos, interviews, previews, all sorts of stuff. Button. Click it.